Well, by this point, you've probably already figured out that we're doing things a little differently today, and I'm glad that we're doing that because I think sometimes, especially around Journey, people get to see one very small part of who you are. This is Jay. Jay is our worship pastor at Journey, and we're just gonna have a little conversation about our topic today, like responding in worship. But before we do that, let's talk about the best parts of your life. Tell me about your family real quick.
Yep. So as he said, I'm Jay. I have the privilege of serving on the team here at Journey. I am married almost 9 years to my wife, Josie. We have 3 kids, Harper, who's 6, Jace, who's 4, and Jaden, who's 2. So we've been in Jackson for almost 5 years now, actually,
Wow.
which is pretty crazy. But moved here in November of 21 for this role and have just been kicking it since.
It really is cool because we watched the kids grow up and just amazing things go on in their lives. Most of the folks in and around Journey, let's say a good chunk of people, the majority of what they see about Jay, our worship pastor, is what happens in this 12 or so feet right here. And maybe interactions in the hallways or in the lobby or something. But there's a lot more to your role around Journey than just sing songs, music performance, kind of like what we see on Sundays. Why don't you talk a little bit about kind of the scope of the role that you look and what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so if you just talk about like responsibilities in general, basically anything that's seen or heard outside of what you or Chris is talking, I'm not responsible for your words, but
you don't want to take any kind of
no responsibility there. But anything that's seen or heard in this room or really outside the walls of Journey kind of falls under my role. But most of my attention does happen to fall on Sunday morning and what we call the catalytic weekend experience. And our
catalyst is a weird word, right? Like catalyst is it something that sparks in us like a response to it. But say that again, a catalytic weekend experience.
Catalytic weekend experience. So it kind of drives the train of everything that happens here. It kind of is a good kickstart for everything there.
Yeah.
So, but what we focus in on is the experience that you have when you walk through these doors, from the time that you walk in to the time that you leave. Our goal as a team, worship and production, if you want to call it that, is to really lean into a distraction-free and open and welcoming environment to allow people to just have a time with God. Life's chaotic, and so if you could come in and find just some peace for 30 minutes, that's a win. That's a win for us.
Yeah, especially if it comes in and catalyzes our next step forward. And that's how we cooperate. Like whether it's the stuff I say or the series we plan or the things, it's all about moving us forward. And that's super helpful to us. But you clearly don't do that by yourself. I mean, we're all grateful, but no, but you lead a significant team and they work hard like crazy. So tell us about that.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, sometimes it looks like pick 4 songs and be done for the week. What do you do the rest of the time? But it's pretty crazy. We've got about 15 people that
Is that all you do? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's all I do. We rotate about 50 people, both on the platform, in the back. We've got some photography, videography people as well that you see floating around every now and then.
Now, when you say in the back, you mean like the
back
sound, lighting,
production
screens,
team is what we would call them. Yeah. And so about 50 people. And again, it seems from the outside looking in like those people just come here on Sunday and play some music or hang out for a little while and then go home. But the reality of that is that those people are really sacrificing a ton. I feel like one of the biggest, hey, I got you, that I feel is from the team up here. And, I wouldn't be able to do even remotely close to what we do week in and week out without them. And a lot of what is unseen is that these people put in hours and hours. We have a weekly rehearsal on Thursday.
And that's a couple hours by itself.
Yep. And then they're here Sunday morning. We get here and start at 7, and most of us are leaving around 1 once we pack up and do everything there. So
another 6 hours.
Yeah.
And then not to mention getting ready.
Right. Yeah. That's just being here. And then, I may be a little biased, but I think one of the best music groups in town.
Oh, no doubt.
Is right
best
here.
Live music.
And genuinely, I mean, they put prep into that. It's not just show up and play some guitar. It's the real deal.
And we have some really gifted players, singers, even, I mean, technical skill in the back. Those are all, it's amazing to me. And I say this all the time around here. We have hands down. I mean, I've been to every live music venue, every bar in town, and we have the best live music in town, hands down.
I would say to venture off of that a little bit more, they're good musicians, but I think what sets them apart as a worship team is that they're not just about the music. We talk about all the time that music is a tool to communicate. And what we're about is not about making good music, although that is a goal, and that helps keep things distraction-free.
Right, it would be terrible if it sucked.
Right. And so, but the main goal is to communicate a message that we're all passionate about.
Oh, it's super cool. You know, when we talk about worship music, that's when people think worship, they automatically think music. But when we say worship music, those two words together, that's a broad term. That is width to it. And you have a job to pick, like, out of literally millions of options, 4 songs. Talk a little bit about how there's a tension in the idea of worship music, isn't it?
Yeah, I can really nerd out about this a little bit because we could like talk the history of how music came to be in church, all the way back to like Martin Luther days, when really music was just chanting scripture together. And
without a particular melody, even. Yeah.
Somebody stands up here and sings something, and then you sing it back to him. And then Martin Luther takes that and writes some almost protest-style songs that are played out in the street, took tunes that people were familiar with, wrote words to them, and people started singing them. That led to things that we would refer to as hymns now, and those hymns were then collaborated into a book. Yeah, we called it a hymnal.
Book. I grew a hymn book. It said hymnal, but nobody.
the good classic redback one, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
But then you fast forward to like the '80s, and you see what we would call as contemporary Christian music in the Jesus movement.
As the deer pants for the water.
Right, which is a hymn now.
It is now a hymn. They call it.
But pretty crazy, they took songs at that time, melodies that they had written for their secular music and put Christian words
bar
to
tunes,
and used them in church. And 40 years later, we're kind of here where the two coincide and morph together and work. And it's interesting. I could sit and kind of talk the history of all that, but the reality is, it's the words in the song. When we use music in church, it's allowing us to put words to our heart language, if you could. I struggle sometimes just to speak clearly, but there's moments that I can sit and really think and articulate what I'm thinking in a song.
Yeah, lyric.
And just lyrically really hone in on what I'm trying to say. And it's a way that I've grown to communicate with God and with people. And so like I said, music isn't worship.
Yeah, that's true.
But music is for sure a tool that we can use to worship.
That's important, I think, for where we're going today, is that music in and of itself isn't worship, but music is a tool to worship. So often it's so easy for us. We sit in chairs, we face this direction, it's okay, this is the worship set, and we sit down together or we stand up together and we sing these songs. And it's hard. Some people are like, I want to sing like crazy. Some people are like, I want to raise my hands. Some people are like, I want to cry. But then there are other people who are like, yeah, I don't even want to sing out loud. Other people who are like, I want to do things, but it's hard for our person. It's just, that's a big spectrum of people, especially at places like Journey, where you spread out 3 services over Sunday morning. So, some people, it's early in the morning, they're like, I just woke up 15 minutes ago, man, what do you want from me? And other people who are like, they come to an 11:30 service and they're like, I mowed the lawn and got my kids ready and now I'm here, I'm kind of tired. And then you got a middle service, so 3 services, hundreds of adults coming from dozens and dozens of different backgrounds. And you're bringing all those people together, your team brings all those people together for 4 songs and says, maybe let's just collectively try to point our hearts in the same direction. And some people visibly participate, and some people are just reading and engaging, and some people are like, I'm not sure I even believe this stuff. That has to be a huge challenge, I'm guessing. So, like, talk about some of the challenges you face leading us in worship.
Yeah, I think that is kind of the biggest challenge for me. My ultimate desire in this role is to give people the opportunity to worship in the way that they want to do it freely. Now,
In their personality.
But like you said, there's a lot of personalities, a lot of backgrounds, a lot of just opinions about how to do that, and all of them are valid.
Right.
But we're all in this together, and so in some way we've got to figure out how to bring that all together.
All of them are individually valid. They're not all corporately valid because it's hard.
Right.
I can't imagine.
Which, I mean, everything that we do in here on Sunday morning is pretty much subjective. The song choice, the sound quality, and overall volume.
Yeah.
The songs that are playing on the playlist walking in, like every piece of that, the tone that the keys have, every piece of that could sound fantastic to you, and that same sound I hear, and I'm like, will you turn that off now?
Right.
It just sounds bad. And so all of that being subjective, trying to find something that is balanced is a challenge. I've found that the easiest way to just not let that be a challenge is to allow God to take care of all of it. And that sounds a little cliche, but there is a point where if I sat and was just about the production and the event that we put on every Sunday, it's going to make somebody...
It could be perfect and useless at the exact same time. Yeah. It's so, like you said, music isn't worship in and of itself, that it's a tool, and trying to use the right tool at the right time. And it's sometimes, like, with that many people, like, I don't know about me, like, there were some, or I don't know about you, but my experience, there were some times in my life where I'm like, that moment was a big worship moment for me, or that period of time for me. Like, I have real valuable memories of singing hymns in church, and I didn't even really like going to church as a kid, but I still remember the feeling of it, like, this is like an us moment, and it was cool, Or like when I was in high school, camps, like, our youth pastor was really good at bringing us together, lighting the campfire, getting the emotions up, and we'd sing, our version of Kumbaya, and it was like, God is here, and so it's hard not to want that back again,
Right. I mean, and for me, it's really easy to go to like a 2005 worship song and me be like, this is going to hit so hard.
Yeah, God is going to show up.
It hits me. It hits me because I go back to being a teenager or whatever. However,
the moments when you were catalyzed, like forward,
And my preference, I tend to, I could sit in a what you call a low, slow, and in the dark moment for 10 minutes, but that doesn't serve everybody else well,
If I always give them a hard time about the low, slow, and in the dark. I'm like, why are we low, slow, and in the dark for 4 songs? I'm going to fall asleep, man. Like, anyway, sorry.
Yep.
So, one last thing. Music isn't worship, but music is a tool to worship. So what we're really saying is that, maybe half an hour of our corporate life together at Journey is music worship, and really worship is the rest of our lives throughout the whole week. The other 23 and a half hours that day and 24 hours a day for the other weeks or the other days. So just be honest and transparent with us. Where's God at work in Jay's life these days to draw out worship in you that isn't your musical life? I mean, you're a musician, so like it's easy to go, oh, he draws out worship in these songs. But how is God working in your heart and your life in other spaces in your life?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest things for me, I've always chased the next thing. Like, I just want to get to the next phase. I want to get the next guitar.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Some of it's materialistic, but then at the same time, I mentioned I got 3 kids, and that chase to stop buying diapers. Get potty trained because I want to stop buying diapers. Everything was always about what's over the hump. What's the next thing? And one thing in the season of my life right now that I'm just trying to battle through really is that when I'm constantly looking ahead, I miss what's right in front of my face. and it's easy to just kind of walk past it. And so I'm trying to learn that contentment is not just found in having things or life looking right. Contentment is found in realizing what God has created you for.
Yeah.
And that sounds like an easy, like, oh yeah, what God's created me for. But when you sit and ask yourself the question, what am I created to do? I think most of us go, I have no clue. Yeah. You know, I may be successful in my job, but there's pieces of that feel empty. I may feel like my family's put together, but then there's pieces of it that you're like, I could be a better dad, or I could be a better husband, or fill in the blank for you. There's always I can be a better, but as we strive to be better humans, I think it's important. And one thing that I'm really, really just trying to learn is to be grateful for where I'm at right here, right now. Because there's a lot of things that could be different that could really just wreck what I feel like is hard.
So we're trying to get to the next thing and then realize we rushed that. It could kill us.
Yeah. And then, but there's the flip side of it too, where you grow so content that
then you're complacent.
Moving. Yeah, exactly. You're just sitting. And so that's not what I'm saying.
But that's where Jesus is at in it. Like he's pulling us forward. And that's where worship really lives, is that it's not just the songs I sing or the way I feel. It's that relationship with Jesus and becoming more like him is worship. That's what we were created to do.
There's a song that we sing right now that has really hit kind of both of these areas for me really hard. And it's the bridge of, the song's called The Blood. And the first part of the bridge says, it's never been about performance or perfection or striving for acceptance. So there's a piece of that what I do right here on the platform week in and week out, and we've talked about it as a team too.
Right.
It's never been about performance or perfection, because that's really what we're trying to do as musicians. But it's not about all those things. It's about the blood of Jesus.
Yes.
And then it follows that up with, it's never been about deserving or earning. It's a gift that's freely given. And some of that contentment side of things is, I'm not just striving for the next thing all the time, but it's also kind of, I push so hard to be better or to look the part better that I start feeling undeserving of those things.
Yeah.
And the reality is we don't deserve the sacrifice of Jesus, but he freely gave it to us. And when I sit and recognize that, I feel like my response, whether that be just a sit in awe or like a fall on the ground crying or a hands up jumping around, whatever that response is, that's where my worship comes from. Is that
worship is the response to God's unbelievable generosity, goodness, kindness. I mean, it's what Romans says, that it's your kindness, Lord, that draw me to repentance. It's these things you do that I go, oh, I've got to pour out that. Now, it looks different for all of us, and that's what we're going to talk about today, like how that really looks different for us, but it's all the same, that our lives are lived out responding to his goodness. And that's what worship's really about. Hey, thanks for being up here, buddy. I appreciate that. All right, so we've really messed with the word worship. I mean, we talked about, like Jay said, the first thing, that music isn't worship. Music is just one of the tools that you can use to worship. But here's another thing that's going to mess with our understanding of worship, is that worship isn't just a religious thing. Worship is something that happens in our lives all the time. This last week, I was up in Chicagoland area, and I played golf with another pastor friend of mine and my nephew, and we got kind of paired up with a guy that just kind of joined us to fill out 4 players, and he jumped on, and his name was Greg Braggs. And if you were a Chicago sports fan, you'd probably know Greg Braggs because he covers the Bears, the Blackhawks, and the Bulls in their respective seasons, and he's one of the main voices in CHGO Sports, and he's the founder of Braggs in the Stands. And he is an avid sports fan, and so my nephew, who's an avid Chicago sports fan, just was in his best moments of his life. And I just listened to those guys talking about how much they loved it and how much they were into it, and I'm like, that's what I'm talking about this weekend. That's worship. They're just ascribing value and worth to something great. And it's so awesome. And I'm not beating them up for it, right? It's really fun to see people just naturally live it out. When you go to avid.com and they describe an avid sports fan as this: an avid sports fan exhibits deep emotional, financial, and time-intensive devotion to teams or sports. It's often consuming content through podcasts and now audio rather than just television. What about that? Isn't what we want, even as a church? When Jay was talking about a catalytic worship experience, where an experience together that we have that goes, man, I want to devote more of my deep emotions, my finances, and my time-intensive devotion to God. That's what this experience is about, is catalyzing that. Here's that word, response from us. That worship isn't just music, and worship isn't just religious word. We all do it all the time. We worship convenience. We put our time, devotion, attendance, like all that stuff into making things convenient. How many gadgets do we have to make our life convenient? How many times have you put time? We worship rest. We worship peace. We worship relief. Right? We worship money. We worship our jobs. We worship, and it is not a bad thing, because what we're really doing is not necessarily like bowing down and singing songs to peace, or bowing down and praising our rest or our jobs, right? We're ascribing value or significance to it. In fact, it helps me, and I don't know if this will help you, but it helps me to stop thinking of worship and start thinking of worship as like worthship. We're gonna get this to change here. Worthship is really what it's about. Like, that's really what worship is, right? It's ascribing value or significance. It's about attaching some of who I am to it. And we all worship stuff all the time. In fact, I would say at every moment in your life, you're probably at worship of something, ascribing value or worth to peace or rest or your job. It's part of who we are, because here's the thing that we sometimes forget. Humans are created to worship. That's who we are. God made us worshipers. It's the reason that Jesus talks so clearly about worship. Even on the Sermon on the Mount, he said this we talk about it in terms of giving. He said, where your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. That's worship. Where we put our money, our heart naturally goes. Where we have our heart, our money naturally goes. Our treasure goes where our heart is. That's an important distinction that goes way beyond songs and melodies and standing and sitting and singing along, right? Worship is our life. And when Paul talks about, writes to a group of people in Rome, Christians who are trying to figure out and sort out what worship is as a response, he talks about this other group of people he said they've exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator. You see what's going on? There's not a melody. There's not a music note. There's not any kind of experience or corporate gathering. The people he's talking about are like going, I don't want to worship something of value. I want to worship the created thing. And they weren't bound down singing songs to it. They were just living their lives centered around the created thing rather than the Creator himself. It's what happens when we start getting beyond being responsible with the world we live in and start being consumed by our respect of the earth. We worship the created rather than the Creator. This is because we're all the time worshiping. Can I just live this out for us? Maybe changing our definitions helps, maybe understanding some things about what Scripture or what we're trying to accomplish here helps. But here's what's important. We experience God's goodness and we respond to it. Responding is what knocks down the next domino and moves us forward. So let's talk a little bit about some next steps for your life. If you want to start to reorganize how you worship and saying, I want to choose to evaluate my life and push it toward new things. I want to worship the Creator rather than the created. I'm not just saying lean into song. That may or may not be your personality, but you should engage with those words even if it doesn't ever come out of your mouth. But more than that, let's talk about what we should do. The first thing is, I would tell you, evaluate where your time, attention, and money are going. It's a lot like living on a budget. Do you know that every one of you live on a budget? Every one of us. Some of you are like, no way, not me. I've never lived on a budget, but you do, right? Here's how you do it. Some people in this room, before the month begins, we choose to say, this is where every dollar is going to go for the next month. And that budget rules our life. Some of us live out the month and then get to the end of the month and figure out what the budget was. We all live on a budget. And if you wanted to say, hey, I want to live on a better budget, and that would be the way to do, live on a better budget where I choose where the money goes, you know what you got to do first? You should look backwards and see where your money's already going. And build a budget that looks like that and go, is that smart, right? The same thing's true about our worship. You're already worshiping something. Just look at what? Maybe look back over where your time, your attention, your money, where's it going? What are you pouring it into? And just take an objective look. Is that reflect what I think is important in my life? Does where my time, attention, and money go right now, does that reflect the values that I really want? And then the next question comes down to prioritizing where you want your heart to go. Remember when Jesus said this? He said in Matthew 6, he said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What he's saying is there's a string between your money, your treasure, your time, the things you value. There's a string between that and where your heart goes. You put your heart somewhere, your treasure will follow it. But the opposite's also true. If you put your treasure somewhere, your heart will follow. Do you want your treasure, you want your heart to be fully devoted more so like to worship the Creator rather than the created? If we start putting our time, our attention, our treasure in His things, our heart's coming right behind it because those are tied together. So evaluate where you're at. Choose to think objectively. Does where my time, attention, and money are going, does that reflect what I really think is valuable in my life? And then choose to say, no, I'm going to prioritize it. I'm going to put the right amount. It doesn't have to be everything. I'm going to put a significant movement that way, and I'll trust that God will bring my heart along behind it. It's not fake it until you make it. It's move it until God moves you behind it. And that is a big deal. The third part of it is probably the hardest part. It's easy to give up so quickly, so stick with it for the long haul. Choosing to change our lives is not something you decide in church and then leave and go do, right? Choosing to change our lives is a transformative process where we move and God moves in us, where we move more and He moves in us more. Eugene Peterson said it really well when he said this: discipleship, it's growing or following Jesus. Discipleship is a long obedience in the same direction. You want to change your heart? Change from the inside out. One moment at a time. You want to change your life, your behavior, your worship. You want to point it in a more valuable direction. Man, me too, right? You want to struggle with it? Me too. I get it. This is hard, right? That's the reason why when Paul writes about what real worship looks like, he doesn't talk about music. He says this: I urge you, brothers and sisters, in response to God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. He's not just talking about our physical bodies. He's saying offer your life as a life lived out in sacrifice. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is true and proper worship. There's no music involved in that. There's no songs. There's no drum set or instrument breakdown. There's no moment of prayer. He's saying, listen, if you really want to worship, it's a response. Respond, because I'll tell you this, what's so important about faith and it moving forward is that you and I begin to make it normal in our lives to respond to God's goodness. Responding is what changes our lives. And he says, don't conform any longer to the patterns of this world that tries to just kind of like modify behavior and fix things and fake it from the outside in. He says, don't do that anymore, but instead be transformed, changed by the renewing of your mind. How do you do that? You and I choose what's important to us, reorganize our life around it, prioritize those important things of saying, God, I want to be a worshiper of you, not a worshiper of the things around me. I love these things, but I love that you gave them to me. And I'm going to choose to trust you so that you can take my heart transformed from the inside out by the renewing of our mind in Christ Jesus. It is not our behavior that is worshipful. It's not our music. It's the pulling of our heart, our choosing to say to Jesus, what you have done for me elicits, requests, requires a response from me. And that is worship.